You know, we're quite prepared to watch adverts before at the cinema. We're quite prepared to be interrupted in the TV to watch TV adverts. We're more than happy to deal with mail, and it's just part of how we live in our homes. So we had some insights from the ethnography. So to summarise that bit of research, you know, mail gets through. We've got much higher open rates and much higher interaction levels than we previously believed that we had. We know that it flows through the home and it moves around the house and it's shared and it's discussed and it's filed and it's displayed. And on average, it's 17 days, we found in the quant, that a piece of mail can stay inside someone's home. And that is, you know, we didn't know that before, and that really is very different from other media, and it starts to explain why we see the effects that we've seen that Mike described earlier on. The other thing we found when we looked at the different, the profiles of the people who are responding, is we found that we've got very similar responses to all age groups. So it's not fair to say that email's only good for older people and young people would much rather have it on the iPad or whatever. Just not true. In fact, because the brands who talk to young people tend to use mail less, this share of voice argument on the mail map means that we've seen some very encouraging results from younger-oriented brands using mail. And as an aside, we thought we'd have a little experiment with our research group, and we said to them as they arrived, fill in your name and address, and we're having a prize draw to say thank you for taking part, and you know, and tick the box for the prize that you'd like. And one of the prizes was a trip to a spa, and in this case it was Knighton Grange, which was one we've invented, and I'll come on and tell you why we invented a spa. And we found that of the people who only saw mail versus the people who only saw the email communication about that spa, when we went back afterwards and said, oh, I'm really sorry, but we've lost all those forms you filled in only 2 hours ago. Would you mind doing it again? Because we really want to make sure you get the chance to win. 17% of people who had only seen the mail version switched to Knighton Grange, but only 2% who had been exposed to the email switched. So I think it's somewhere between anecdotal and proof, but it does suggest that mail is very effective at changing behaviour and changing points of view. So it speaks a bit to the power.
So we faced Ian with the challenge of, given the understanding that we're beginning to create, particularly about how mail creates long-term value, particularly about how mail moves around in the home. You know, and there are, because of the frequency with which it's revisited, it's actually performing the role of several different media channels. Yeah, as a creative director, where does he see great examples of mail bearing out the learning Jonathan Scott?
And the key to that is the power of its emotional connection. Okay? So when you're going through all the case studies, don't think communication, don't think what it's saying, think about how it makes you feel, and also don't think about the experience. Because it's experiential, it's about what we feel. We post-rationalise stuff. Initially, it hits you emotionally. Again, the principles behind all the things I'm showing is the power of personal. That's just so genuine and authentic. And I think, again, that's what mail has the ability to do. The one previously was mass, is from a big company. Mail also has the power to be so incredibly genuine. I think sometimes we don't celebrate how powerful it can be. Really genuinely, the connectability, use technology with it, the power to genuinely create memories, because you know, the retention is a memory. Think creating memories, not response. You know, and I think if we start to think of it differently, mail has a big future still, and I just don't think we tap it enough.
So when you do a mailing, you're actually using a mailing for a number of response mechanics, not just the postal response, but text response, web response, phone response. As we've seen from the ethnography, people generally do use a mailing and respond to it and interact with it using other media channels in numerous ways. It's not just a static postbox idea. But also, I think there's another interesting element to this is we're not just talking about response, we're talking about emotional response and actually moving someone along in their relationship with your brand. So we don't need to necessarily drive them to actually do something straight away. It can be part of a more elongated, long-term consumer journey. The problem's always been is the CPT of mail, the cost, right? This is a classic MC&C planning chart that I got taught and trained on years ago. And it still applies largely today. It's still a very interesting way to look at the world and useful. Now, what I was taught was a high CPT means that you need to get a high response rate for it to be successful, and a low CPT means you can lower your response rate. Fine. The issue we've got is obviously mail has just been tarnished, or essentially just put down as a high cost per thousand medium. Oh, it costs too much. It's too much. It's high CPT. Not even, often just not on the agenda in a planner's head. They're just like, oh, I'm not doing a mailing. Have you seen the CPT on it? We shouldn't forget basic principles of rigor of thought and actually evidence-based thinking of how we plan and use media. And this is what I think this presentation is about. It's about looking at how time, integration and value work and actually using rigor of thought and old school marketing principles at times to really understand what's going on. And most crucially, in which I don't want to get too passionate about this, is your main issue is the consumer, is the human being who you're communicating to. Don't ever forget that. Yeah, I think Mark Zuckerberg needs to remember that at times. Actually, it's human beings who are the core principle of what we do. Not the technology, it's the communication, and the communication of how you interact with your fellow man. And that's emotional. It's post-rationalisation, it's system 1, system 2. It's us. And that's what a mailing really brings home when you think about how you apply it in a planning sense.